10.000 mensen gedood, duizenden kinderen.
Amsterdam begins not with sound, but with rhythm. The hush of arriving trains rolling over steel. The faint echo of footsteps meeting the stone floors of the central station. And the soft hiss of air as doors slide open to let travelers spill into a world balanced between water and sky. The station itself, with its red brick Gothic arches and ornate clock towers, stands like a proud introduction to the city's story. Beneath it lies a forest of wooden piles, thousands driven deep into marshy ground more than a century ago. Everything here rests on timber, a reminder that the Dutch did not find solid earth, they made it. As you step out toward Damrak, morning light stretches across the paving stones. Bicycles glide past in swift, graceful lines, their wheels whispering like wind on a canal. The air smells faintly of coffee, engine oil, and damp stone, that unmistakable scent of a city built at the edge of the sea. To the left, trams hum along silver rails. To the right, tourists gather with cameras, unaware that beneath their feet once flowed the open Damrak Gracht, where ships from the world's oceans unloaded spices, silk, and dreams. In the 17th century, this was water, not road, a bustling harbor canal where the Dutch East India Company's vessels arrived heavy with cargo. You can almost hear the creak of wooden hulls, the shouted orders in Dutch, Malay, and Arabic, the splash of ropes into dark water. The same stretch that now carries buses and taxis once carried nutmeg, pepper, and porcelain, treasures that would make Amsterdam the richest city on earth. Walk slowly. The façades here lean forward ever so slightly, as if curious about you. Their gables, stepped, bell-shaped, ornamented with iron hooks, were designed for hauling goods up and in, because the staircases inside are narrow as secrets. Centuries later, the hooks remain, pointing toward the clouds like memories that refuse to fade. Between souvenir shops and cafes, you'll still glimpse a wooden door frame blackened by age, or a carved stone that once marked a merchant's house. man passes with a delivery bike stacked high with bread crates. A woman in a bright yellow coat stops to check her reflection in a shop window. The modern city hums, yet under that hum runs another sound, the steady pulse of trade, of motion, of a people who have always turned challenge into craft. When storms flooded their fields, they built dikes. When the sea threatened, they drained land. When marsh refused to hold them, they drove piles until it did. Listen carefully to the echoes bouncing off the glass facades. Each reflection is layered. 21st century light over 17th century design. The rhythm of footsteps here hasn't changed in 400 years. A bridge once crossed the water near where you stand. Sailors would pause upon it, glancing back toward the harbor to measure wind and fate. Now commuters cross the same invisible line between departure and arrival, carrying laptops instead of ledgers, coffee instead of compass. There's something humble yet heroic about Amsterdam. It never shows off its greatness through height or grandeur. It hides it in geometry. The careful pattern of canals, the angle of a bridge, the repetition of windows like musical notes. Even the water moves modestly, rising and falling with tides that still remember the sea. A light drizzle begins, thin as mist. It softens the colors, the deep red of brick, the gray of tram tracks, the golden reflection of a cafe sign trembling on wet pavement. Raindrops ripple through puddles shaped by centuries of footsteps. You walk through them and think how many others have done the same. Sailors, painters, bankers, and poets, each leaving behind a little piece of themselves in this constant movement. As you near the midpoint of Damrak, notice how the buildings on your right shift in age. Modern hotels press against narrow 17th century houses, like time compressing itself into one narrow corridor. Amsterdam refuses to separate past and present. It lets them coexist. It is both museum and marketplace, prayer and party, harbor and home. Farther down, a canal tourboat glides beneath a low bridge. Its recorded guide voice drifts faintly upward. On your left, the Beurs van Berlage, built in 1903, once the city's stock exchange. The building's brick walls look stern, yet inside is warmth. Cafes, exhibitions, the murmur of conversation echoing under high ceilings. Commerce has become culture, yet the purpose is the same: to gather people, to exchange ideas, to keep movement alive. At the edge of your hearing, a street performer begins strumming a guitar near the tram stop. The melody floats easily, mingling with tram bells and bicycle clicks. A modern symphony shaped by routine. The performer's open case holds a few coins glinting in the weak light. A child tosses one in, smiling shyly. Small gestures like this are the city's heartbeat. Somewhere behind you, the clock at Central Station strikes 10. The chime rolls down Damrak like a wave, passing through the crowd, through your chest, into the canals beyond. It's the same note that has marked mornings for generations, a continuity of sound bridging centuries. You stop beside a small kiosk selling fresh stroopwafels. Steam curls into the air, carrying a sugar and butter scent that cuts through the damp. The vendor smiles, flips a waffle, and hands it over wrapped in paper. You bite, sweet, warm, a taste that anchors you in the present moment. The drizzle fades. Sunlight filters through again, catching droplets on your sleeve. Ahead, the street widens toward the Dam, the square that has seen revolutions, proclamations, and daily life unfold side by side. Everywhere you look, Amsterdam reminds you that permanence is an illusion. Everything here floats, the houses, the bridges, even time itself. Yet within that motion, there is steadiness, a quiet certainty born of knowing how to live with water instead of fighting it. The Dutch mastered that balance, and it shaped their view of life. Practical, patient, resilient. The crowd thickens as you keep walking down Damrak, and voices begin to weave into the soundscape. Dutch, English, German, fragments of laughter that ride the air between the rumble of trams and the clinking of cafe glassware. Somewhere above all that, the gulls wheel and cry, reminders that the sea is never far. The rain clouds that had pressed low drift toward the IJ, leaving behind the metallic smell of wet stone and the brightness of washed light. A man in a blue jacket pedals past, his umbrella clipped to the handlebars like a small sail. You watch him disappear into the moving field of bicycles that defines this city. Amsterdam breathes through its bikes. The rhythm of pedals on pavement has replaced the hoof beats that once echoed here when merchants arrived on horses loaded with goods. 1,000 small wheels have become the pulse of modern trade. To your left stands a row of façades whose foundations are older than memory. Many of these houses date back to the early 1600s, though their windows are new and their insides now hold hotels and souvenir shops. The proportions, however, remain identical. Narrow plots dictated by medieval tax rules that charged by frontage. Necessity created beauty. Tall houses, stacked stories, and rooftops that step upward like organ pipes. When sunlight strikes their windows, each pane catches a slightly different shade, turning the whole street into a slow shimmer. Near the intersection with Ouderbrugsteeg, you pause for a moment where the street tightens. The air here feels close, charged, almost theatrical. You can smell coffee from a shop tucked inside one of the old warehouses. Above it, the word Anno 1650 carved into stone. You run your hand across the wall. The brick feels warm, rough, solid. Imagine the hands that built it, calloused, wet from mortar, working quickly before the tide would A bell somewhere to the south marks another hour. It could be from the Oude Kerk, the oldest church in the city, standing quietly a few blocks away behind the dense weave of alleys. That church has been here since the 1200s, long before Amsterdam had even paved its streets.
No.
Its foundations, too, rest on wooden piles sunk into peat, and yet it has stood through floods, wars, and centuries of prayer. The sound of its bells carries through the narrow lanes like breath through a flute. Even if you don't see the tower, you feel its presence, patient, grounding.
Want ik slok het even van
Überall riecht es Italiano.
Dove?
Ah, ecco, questo c'era anche ieri da Eros. Ma già fa
Ja.
Of de anus?
Nee.
Kijk dan maar. Ach, kijk dan.
You keep walking and Damrak begins to open wider, the sense of confinement lifting as the façades draw back. The energy here is unmistakable, the meeting of every kind of traveler. People pulling suitcases, locals balancing coffee cups on bikes, a street artist painting the reflection of the Beurs van Berlage in watercolors that dry too fast in the breeze. The building itself, once the city's stock exchange, looms ahead in heavy red brick. Its clock tower cuts the skyline with quiet authority, the architectural equivalent of a steady hand. Inside now is music, laughter, exhibitions, trade turned into culture, numbers into art. This is Amsterdam's trick, transformation without erasure. The city never destroys what came before. It folds it into the next chapter. The canal that used to run here is buried beneath the asphalt, but its shape still guides the street, and its memory still guides the people. The Dutch word dam means barrier. Rak means straight stretch of water. Even in its name, this place is both defense and openness, control and freedom. You slow your pace, letting the flow of the crowd carry you forward. A tram bell rings, short and polite, like a cough to clear the air. The car glides past with a whisper, windows full of faces. A student reading, a woman holding flowers, a man half asleep. For a second you catch your reflection among them, traveler and local at once, here and passing through. The tram vanishes toward the square, and the street resumes its rhythm. A faint breeze picks up, carrying the scent of fries from a stand nearby, sharp with vinegar and salt. The vendor jokes in Dutch with two teenagers, switches effortlessly to English when you step closer. This is another language of Amsterdam, the language of trade, smooth and generous. You take the cone of fries and walk again, the paper growing translucent with oil. The taste is simple, grounding, the kind of flavor that anchors you amid the swirl of history. The further you go, the more the light changes. It bounces now from the canal that runs parallel beyond the buildings, glinting off shop windows in the chrome of parked bikes. Overhead, a plane crosses the pale sky. One more connection between water and air, arrival and departure. You wonder how many stories begin and end right here, at this stretch that everyone must pass, whether they're coming home or leaving it. As you draw closer to the open expanse of the Dam, the crowd begins to thin and then reform again in waves, drawn toward the square like tides following the moon. The tram lines bend gracefully here, tracing silver arcs through the stone. For centuries, this space has been the heart of Amsterdam's story, the place where celebrations erupted, where citizens protested, where kings addressed the people, and where daily life continues as if history itself were just another passerby. The sound changes as the street opens. The tight echo of Damrak dissolves into the vast, breathing resonance of the square. You hear pigeons flapping, the hiss of espresso machines from cafes, a child's laughter bouncing off the façade of the Koninklijk Paleis, the royal palace. To your right stands the Oude Kerk, the new church, though it is already 600 years old. Its tall Gothic windows filter the light into ribbons that sweep across the floor.
En faciliteiten, kerken gebombardeerd, moskeeën gebombardeerd, landbouwgrond gebombardeerd, de Lafaards 71.000 mensen gedood, duizenden kinderen. Gedood, honderden baby's gedood door uithongeren, stop genocide met steun van Europese Unie en andere westerse landen, stop rassenmoord.
Once, every major coronation of Dutch kings took place there. Now it hosts art exhibitions, where paintings and sculptures share the space with silence. The bells of the church chime gently, joining the constant murmur of voices and footsteps, blending centuries together into one unbroken hum. The air feels wider, brighter, touched with a faint smell of roasted nuts from a vendor's cart. You stop for a moment, letting your steps match the rhythm of this place. The palace before you seems to float slightly above the square, its stone a soft, gray-green under the light. It wasn't built for royalty at all. It began as the city hall in the 17th century, when Amsterdam was the richest port in the world. The architects wanted it to look like a temple of reason, symmetrical, measured, every column and window reflecting the order that the Dutch believed they could bring to chaos. Inside those walls once echoed the business of an empire. Contracts signed for ships bound to Batavia, Suriname, and the Cape of Good Hope. You imagine the smell of parchment and ink, the careful scratch of quills, the murmur of voices trading goods and fates. Now tourists take photographs on the same marble steps where merchants once argued over grain prices. A wedding couple poses for pictures. A street dancer spins nearby, his sneakers flashing in the sun. The city folds its history like layers of paper, and each generation writes something new on top of the old. You turn slightly toward the narrow mouth of Warmoesstraat. Cars drift by slowly, respectful of the pedestrians who flow endlessly through. The street seems to point toward the past and the future at once, leading west toward the old canals and back east toward the station where everything begins. The air carries a faint trace of water and diesel, the smell of a working city that still moves on trade even when that trade has turned into tourism and technology. Somewhere a busker begins playing an old Dutch folk tune on an accordion, the melody looping around the square like a thread. Children start to dance, their parents watching with tired joy. The tune is simple, 3 chords repeated, yet it feels like something eternal, something that has followed this city through every transformation. When you finally leave the square, turning onto Warmoesstraat, the shift is subtle but clear. The openness narrows again. The sound becomes contained, focused. You pass under the shade of tall buildings whose upper stories catch the sunlight like sails. Ahead, the spire of Oude Kerk rises, distant yet distinct, its dark crown etched against the sky. You feel drawn toward it the way sailors once felt drawn toward lighthouses. The traffic here moves slower. Bicycles click and sigh. Trams slide by with their metallic whisper. On the sidewalks, locals walk with easy precision, eyes ahead but never hurried. There's an unspoken rhythm to Dutch walking, efficient but calm, as if each person knows exactly how much distance life will give them and sees no reason to rush through it.
En dan zeggen ze heel vaak, je moet hier verdwenen. You're a camera guy, yeah?
Dit is meestal de andere van.
Goodbye.
Bye. Okay, done. Wow, you were very quick. Sweet.
Otro día venimos y miramos tranquilo.
Est-ce qu'on est passé à Alper?
As you continue along Warmoesstraat, you pass storefronts that mirror Amsterdam's shifting soul. A design studio where 3D printers hum beside a bookstore that smells of dust and paper, a vintage record shop, a cafe where laptops glow like lanterns in the dim interior. Behind the glass, people work, read, dream. The same acts of creation that built this city, only translated into modern tools. The street tilts gently upward toward the bridge over Keizersgracht. From here you can see how the canals curve, forming the graceful semicircles that define Amsterdam's map. Geometry made poetry. The water gleams bronze under the afternoon sun. Boats drift by, their engines barely audible. Tourists point cameras. Lovers lean close. A dog barks once and is silent again. You lean on the railing for a moment, watching the water. The reflections shimmer. Sky, façades, the rippling ghosts of the bridges. Beneath those ripples lies 400 years of engineering and imagination. The Dutch didn't build canals only for beauty. They were the veins of trade, the lungs of survival. Yet over time, necessity became art. The pattern of canals taught the world that function and grace could be the same thing. A cyclist stops beside you, checks his phone, then pedals away, leaving a small splash as his wheel crosses a puddle. You listen to the fading sound and realize that even the smallest noise belongs here, part of the ongoing composition. You straighten, take one last look toward the spire ahead, and begin walking again. The path leads deeper into the old city, toward neighborhoods where the rhythm softens and the air grows thick with the smell of roasted beans and canal water. The city is changing under your feet, yet it remains utterly itself, a place that built its fortune on movement and managed to make even that movement feel like home. The sound of the city begins to soften as you move farther along Warmoesstraat toward the Oude Kerk. The traffic hum fades into something more organic. Footsteps, bicycle bells, and the gentle rhythm of canal water moving against stone. Ahead, the tower of the church stands tall, dark against the pale sky, its golden crown glinting faintly in the afternoon light. It is said that every Amsterdammer, no matter where they wander, can find their way home by keeping Oude Kerk in sight.
Er waren allemaal toeristen op gele fietsen, maar die gingen over de Canals. Moi, donc je vais devoir faire ça pour mon collègue. Je sens le beignet là. Je sens le beignet.
tower is both compass and memory, both landmark and promise. As you approach, the smell of the nearby flower stalls mixes with that of roasted coffee beans drifting from a cafe on the corner. The city feels warmer here, not in temperature, but in intimacy. The streets narrow, buildings seem to lean closer to each other, their reflections meeting in the canal below, like old friends whispering secrets. The locals call this District de Jordaan, a name that carries the quiet pride of working people and artists, of musicians and poets who once filled these alleys with songs and dreams.
Ali, run!
24.
You guys are just rude.
Nou, wat is het?
Is dat je geen zon? How do you...
If you want to learn Spanish or Colombian, we start with Marica.
Bu taraftan çekelim. Bu tarafta ya.
Basıyor mu müzik?
Filmpje maken. Wauw, mooi. I think that's also called Jordaan.
Niye bizi çekiyor?
Ben biraz zorlama.
You step off the main street and follow a smaller path that leads toward Rozengracht. The bricks underfoot are uneven, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Laundry flutters from windows like soft flags of daily life. There is laughter somewhere behind a door, the sound of dishes clinking, the low murmur of a radio playing an old Dutch tune. This is where the city breathes at a slower pace, where beauty hides not in grandeur, but in the ordinary.
Bij Jehovah, als het bestoten is.
At a cafe near the corner, a group of older men sit beneath an awning, talking quietly over small glasses of Jennifer. One of them catches your eye and nods, not as a greeting to a stranger, but as if acknowledging that you too belong to this passing moment. Amsterdam has a way of making everyone feel temporary yet included, as though you've stepped into a play that has been running for centuries, and the audience no longer distinguishes between actor and guest. As you continue down Rozengracht, the rhythm of the street unfolds like a long verse. Each building tells a different part of the story. Some are crooked, others carefully restored. Some hold bakeries that smell of cinnamon, others tiny art galleries with windows filled by single sculptures. A cat sits in the doorway of a record shop, tail flicking lazily in the sun. Across the canal you hear a woman singing, not for money, not for anyone in particular, just for herself and for the city that seems to answer with echoes from its brick walls. The Jordaan has always belonged to people who work with their hands and hearts. In the 17th century, craftsmen and sailors lived here, their families packed into narrow houses that leaned over the canals. It was noisy, alive, and filled with music. Later, as the city modernized, artists came seeking cheap rent and inspiration. They painted, wrote, and composed in small attics that smelled of turpentine and coffee. The music of that life still lingers. Even now, every cafe here feels like a living room, every bridge like a front porch,